Hello, everyone. Welcome to our award-winning podcast, created by George S. Corey and the artist CLEO. We're back for Season 4, and so are Georgie and Gigi for more fun adventures.
I'm George.
I'm CLEO.
I'm Steven.
I'm Maya.
And I'm Tavia. Welcome to The Social Contract.
One kid, one vote, one cake pop. The artist, CLEO.
Hear, hear. Now that is a campaign slogan I can get behind. At the end of last episode, Yael, the cake pop baker, had just pulled up to CLEO's Halloween party. I can't wait to find out what happens next. I'm sure you can't either, so here it is, the conclusion of Voting is Our Superpower.
CLEO announced, "The cake pops have landed!" The kiddos circled around Yael and jumped up and down cheering. "Ms. Yael," asked Donnie, "are there enough cake pops for everyone? 'Cause I can eat a lot of cake pops." "Yeah," added Gigi. "Ms. CLEO said that she gets like 500 trick-or-treaters every Halloween. And 100 parents," added Georgie. "Tell them, Yael," CLEO said. "I brought 750 cake pops, half chocolate and half vanilla." Wow! The kids marveled in unison. The kids with allergies asked if there were any gluten-free and nut-free pops. CLEO nodded as she held up cake pops from a special box. There were cake pops for everyone. Some were gluten-free, some were nut-free, but all were yummy. The children with allergies thanked Yael, telling her that they missed out on treats a lot of the time. Yael told them that they were very welcome, then put them in charge of handing out the special gluten-free and nut-free pops to anyone who needed them. "Battle stations, everyone!" cried Sister Elaine. "Here come the first kids!" Sister Mary Catherine chimed in. The first wave were grown-ups with babies. "Do we have to give babies cake pops?" asked Donnie. "You know CLEO's rule, Donnie. 1 kid, 1 vote, 1 cake pop," replied Georgie. "And if they're too young to vote, a parent can vote for them and they still get a cake pop," added Gigi. After the early birds, the parents and grandparents accompanying babies and toddlers, came the first batch of kids who were old enough to fill out their ballots and understand what voting meant. The kindergartners arrived next. Then the first, second, and third graders, then the middle schoolers, junior high kids, and later, even some high schoolers. The trick-or-treaters and first-time voters were led first to the ballots table, then to the voting booths. Georgie and Gigi, and even Donnie, helped CLEO and the sisters explain to the kids and their parents that this was a chance for every kid to vote. And for almost every kid, it was the first time they got to actually cast a vote. Just about every kid from 5 to 15, and even grown-up-sized people, asked, "Who do we vote for?" CLEO, standing tall, would cry out with passion, as if she was a founding father who first gave the vote to common men, as if she was a suffragist who brought the vote to women, as if she was a civil rights marcher who fought for the vote for black men and women. Vote for yourself. And the kids got it. They knew that to vote was to stand tall and proclaim, "I matter, and so does my vote." CLEO would then say with a laugh, "And since they're pretend ballots, once you've voted for yourself, you can vote as many times as you like for whomever you like." At the end of the evening, CLEO took them all into the house for pizza and milk, and absolutely nothing sweet, because they had had so much sugar already. They had fun sorting through the ballots that had been cast. There were over 1,200 from kids and 300 from adults. Votes were tallied for everyone from Barack and Michelle Obama to the Pope. But the main competition was between Taylor Swift and Beyoncé. with Georgie leading Team Taylor and Gigi leading Team Beyonce. CLEO, still dressed as Uncle Sam, and Yael, still in her panda costume, waved to the children from the stoop as the yellow school bus decked out in red, white, and blue chugged away. It was an unforgettable party where the children had learned that while Halloween is fun and cake pops are delicious, voting is just plain cool.
I'd go so far as to say super cool. I gotta say, I love the part with the gluten-free and nut-free kids. Thank you, George and CLEO and Stephen, for another amazing performance. Speaking of Stephen, I recently had a chance to catch up with him during a break from him starring in his new Tony-nominated Broadway show, Boop the Musical. Boop is based on the beloved cartoon character Betty Boop, who, believe it or not, first showed up in the 1930s. The Chicago Tribune says it's a hugely enjoyable family show. And in its 4-star review, Time Out New York calls it a bright and bubbly new musical. Here's some of my conversation with the bright and bubbly Stephen DeRosa. Stephen, welcome back to The Social Contract.
Hello.
I want to congratulate you on
Thank
Boop
you.
the Musical. I'm so delighted that you've had such a beautiful experience
Yes.
with it. And I understand that it's a show the whole family can enjoy. So tell us what your experience has been.
It is one of the best shows I've ever been in my life. It's a romantic comedy in the style of the old MGM musicals. We are unfortunately only running until July 13th. I
Oh,
get to play Betty Boop's grandfather, and it's from
Grampy.
yes, Grampy Boop, and he's a scientist, and it's very silly and very happy. And even if it doesn't solve all the world's problems, it certainly, by the time you leave, you'll feel the courage to go tackle the world's problems. So I can't say enough good things about the show.
And what has been the audience response?
The audiences that have come to see it are unlike any audiences that I've ever experienced in my career.
The audiences that have seen it are very, very lucky. And I want to know how you get through 8 shows a week in a huge role in a high energy show. You are obviously doing something that those audiences are responding to and keeping your energy up to meet it. How do you manage that?
The audiences actually really help boost your energy. Because I often get to the theater tired, or, especially the 2-show days are really hard. But when the audiences respond, when they get the jokes and they're invested in the characters, it lifts you up. It lifts your spirit. I can't explain it. It becomes a kind of a spiritual exercise. Don't get me wrong. I still need to ice my leg because, I'm doing all this crazy choreography and it's really fun, but it's, I'm lucky and so happy. So when you like what you do with the people you do it with, it's a lot easier to do it.
That's true, my
That's true.
friend. Georgie and Gigi, let's revisit our friends for a moment.
God, do I love those two.
These are characters that you've created yourself in terms of bringing them to life through your voice. I'm wondering if it was difficult to revisit or reinvent them as second grade kiddos, because listening to it, I'm amazed by what you did, what you pulled off. I think you did a fantastic job. What was your approach?
Thank you so much. I loved it. All I could say is that George and I are spiritually connected.
Aw.
I think that I am so blessed to get to be the guy who reads his incredible work and gives voice to his fantastic characters. Ever since Georgie and Gigi sort of came into his literary universe and his political literary adventures, I've loved them and I've been excited by them. I've been so happy to embody all the characters, the nuns. I've been all the different characters, all these amazing historical figures that in no other world would I be allowed to, or would it be right for me to, but when you're just being, the narrator of these beautiful, fun, happy adventures that want to do nothing more than inspire young people who are listening. So I've been so lucky to do all these different voices and all these different people that I get to express my soul that way, but it's all because of George's writing.
Yeah, that's amazing. Like you said, you play everybody. So not just Georgie and Gigi, but every last one of them is distinct.
Thank
And
you.
you channeling George and creating something very special. Did you base your character voices on people or personalities you knew? Are things just coming through and you're channeling as a wonderful medium for the divine
I
inspiration?
sometimes base them on family and friends, definitely. Whenever it's anyone historical, I go to YouTube. I get the voice as best I can. So at least I have sort of the music of the person. Everyone
Hmm.
has a music to their voice.
Yeah. I understand that there's a coming reveal, a big secret for what's coming up next. So we can't talk about it just yet, but there may be a big announcement coming up in the season finale. So more good
Well, I
ahead.
don't even know that secret, so I can't wait.
I can't wait.
Yay.
Stephen DeRosa, everyone. Now, switching gears, we have a special treat for all our parents out there. As so many of us know, politics these days can divide us, split families, and fray friendships. In the lead up to the 2024 election, George published another letter to his father, just as he did in 2020. This letter, which George called Presidential Transitions, Redux, is raw. It's poignant. But ultimately, I think it's a bold statement of independence, resilience, and ultimately, love. Let's listen.
This week, my dad wrote a letter to me and my brothers and sisters telling us why he was voting for Donald Trump for president in 2024. He had written us all a similar letter 4 years ago, and he had voted for Trump in 2016 as well. 4 years ago, I wrote about my dad's 2020 letter in a coda to my first book of political satire, Presidential Conversations, which had just been published. I wrote then about how my dad was the finest man I've known, about how I had lost faith in all men. My natural father had abandoned our family a decade before, until my dad, my stepdad, redeemed men in my eyes. I wrote how my dad helped me build a life for which I am proud. And I wrote about the struggle among family and friends split along political lines. Working on my books Presidential Conversations and Presidential Conversations for Kids, the various codas to each, and the Social Contract podcast, which I created with the artist CLEO, now in its 3rd season, has been one of the most fulfilling undertakings of my life. This work has literally changed my life. It must be said that none of it would have been possible without the inspiration and art of CLEO. Every idea behind each story was conjured by CLEO. I merely spun the tales. Among the many pieces I have authored, the coda about my dad's 2020 letter was among the most difficult to write. It was also among the best received for what was called its heartfelt and universal appeal. And now, here we are in 2024, and this response to my dad's most recent electoral letter is once again among the most gut-wrenching and redemptive things I have written. I approach my dad's 2024 letter as I did his 2020 letter, with equal parts openness and trepidation. My responses to both underscored by forgiveness and love. From my dad's letter sent in October 2024. I will feel very bad if I do not give you a summary of my opinions before Election Day on November 5th. We live in a dangerous economic and political moment. The Democrats have shown they have no depth of leadership. They elevated candidates no one voted for. No primary elections. Is that democracy? I am not happy with either side, but electing a group that shows no leadership ability at all, I cannot accept. Americans have been becoming populists since Andrew Jackson. Though populism is support for the concerns of ordinary people, it's all too easy to become a populist bankrupt country like Argentina. We are fast on the way. Social Security and Medicare are entitlements that were created about when I was born. Now, our president creates entitlements by the dozens without congressional action. Think of illegal aliens and sanctuary cities and states filling hotels I used to use and giving aliens cell phones, food, clothing, education, Medicare, debit cards, etc. Biden and Harris are enacting massive social programs like paying off student loans, $25,000 for home buyers, $50,000 for starting small businesses. These programs have little economic benefit except as giveaways to curry voters. But Democrats, led by Biden and Harris, compound bad economic policy by benefiting only illegal aliens and people on welfare who are not earners. The benefits, however misguided, could be far greater utilized by hard-working Americans who immigrated legally or were born here. Biden and Harris and the Democrats even passed massive entitlements like the Earned Income Child Care Credit that benefit illegal aliens and people on welfare who have no earnings. This is a gift, not a credit. As a result, U.S. debt increased by $2 trillion this fiscal year to $30 trillion, despite historically low unemployment. Do you want more of that? Do you think weak economic leadership is the answer? You get my concern. A president, commander-in-chief, leader of our economy needs to be a negotiator with heads of state, especially with the Middle East, Russia, and China. But Harris is grossly unqualified. And where is the congressional leadership? Out of 535 members of Congress, both the House and the Senate, at least 500 do no legislation. They are preoccupied only with their own re-elections and fundraising, mainly from special interests rather than constituents. At the very least, having a comprehensive immigration law seems to me a must-issue for every member of Congress. The Democrats are using our court system to destroy their enemies. You could just as easily be watching news about dictators and autocrats who just kill those who disagree with them. Washington, D.C.'s Democrats are making it easier for only them to use our court system to destroy their enemies. I think we should eliminate all of that and make a lot of noise doing it. And Biden and Harris and the Democrats are forcing the Green New Deal on all of us and ruining our economy by mandating ridiculously high-cost alternative energy sources. We are run by idiots with no economic or practical intelligence. The U.S. has 340 million residents. The world has over 8 billion. Some of our largest businesses were forced by Biden and Harris and the Democrats to pledge no fossil fuels by 2030. Do you believe that we and all the truckers and farmers and about 200 countries in the world will accept the Green New Deal and pay 30% higher energy bills? Of course not. The U.S. and the industrialized world will insist on defunding, deflating, and eliminating the Green New Deal and the ridiculously high costs of alternative energy sources it mandates, and growing our economies with lower fossil fuel sources. It's just math. I prefer living in a free democracy. Many of the larger countries are now autocratic dictatorships, socialists, Marxists, etc. We need stronger and more focused leaders than we have now. But the Democrats are going in the wrong direction. I want to stop that and try hard to get back to stability, less spending, and relearning how to compromise. You need to educate yourself on the background of the candidates and what their plan for the future will be. Don't just listen to the spin by Washington insiders, or you will not get real answers. The spin you hear today is not what candidates have been doing and promoting while in and out of office. You will not be happy if November 5th passes and the country has voted in another candidate who was asleep in the basement. While Biden was literally stuck in his Delaware beach house basement because of COVID, Harris's reality is worse, because she is figuratively stuck in the Veep's mansion basement due to being unqualified, unprepared, and fearful. Listen to a variety of sources every day. Be an informed voter. I cannot imagine electing a U.S. president with no leadership skills or experience. Remember that Harris was declared the most liberal member of the U.S. Senate and considered the most progressive prosecutor when she was the Attorney General enforcer in California. That is not what I want for you or me. Best wishes and good voting. Dad. And here is my response. Since Trump came down his gold escalator 9 years ago in June 2015, I have been discussing Trump and his many failures as a president, as a citizen, and as a fellow human being with my family and friends, as well as my dad and other Trump supporters, and anyone I knew or met that was Trump curious. In fact, I started writing political satire in the lead up to Trump taking office as a way to explain him to my 14 nieces and nephews. They were all under 13 then, and now the youngest is 13. Despite their ages, they all now understand that character is the lodestone of the office of the presidency. That political and cultural compasses should point to the presidency as the North Star of political strength, wisdom, and unity. Many people supporting Vice President Harris are triggered by the contentiousness of this election. Many of them also have relatives who are voting for Trump, in some instances for the third time. They are good-hearted enough and want reconciliation so much that if Trump wins, they will find a way to be happy for those who voted for him, or at least content. At least they will not be alone in their disappointment. While I sincerely appreciate that spirit, I do not want to be agreeable if it means having to look away. Harris and Charlemagne the God recently discussed faith and a God that is kind. They discussed character and values. If you blow up your house, where are you going to live? That struck me. Because if Trump blew up this country, I believe his supporters would cheer. And so, the most difficult realization for me in considering my dad's latest "Why I Am Voting for Trump" letter is that Trump's voters are perfectly fine with Trump. He is what they want because Trump encourages every ism. I could have written despite encouraging every ism, but reality must be acknowledged. In their support, they assume his worst attributes by association. But, as I wrote in 2020, in response to the divisions in this beautiful country, love is still and always will be the answer. Whether you approve of Harris as a politician or a former prosecutor, we can observe how she embraces former Trump voters, current Republicans, and independents and welcomes them. She has even earned the support of former Congresswoman Liz Cheney and her father, the former Vice President Dick Cheney, among many others. Harris and Governor Walz are putting the ideas of love and acceptance into action. The truth is very difficult to admit. That Trump supporters want Trump for exactly who he is. For years, I have argued that Fox Business Channel-focused Republicans only cared about their 401ks and tax cuts. But now I realize that the real issue is the rule of law. Of all the issues I simply cannot reconcile with nor convince my dad and other Trump supporters is how Trump is the law and order candidate over Harris in their eyes. At the time of the 2020 letter, rule of law related to lawlessness around the Black Lives Matter movement, as well as protests in cities around the country. In the 2024 letter, rule of law relates to lawlessness of illegal immigrants. My family left Lebanon and immigrated to the United States when I was a young boy because they wanted to live and raise me in a country of laws and peace. So this is a particularly personal issue to me. My dad worked hard his whole life, and he cannot abide people being given entitlements they did not earn. My dad used my own podcast name to reinforce his point that this is the way we truly fulfill the social contract. To my dad and other like-minded Republicans, the line in the sand is about not allowing illegal aliens to receive any entitlements that are perceived to be unearned. And now, it has become a permission structure to allow for a proposed mass deportation of millions of illegal immigrants. Trump says to his followers, "I am your vengeance," and "I am your retribution." We must all recognize that societies and governments have no right to be vengeful. They have a sole responsibility to enforce and punish within the law. As the Bible tells us, do not avenge yourselves, but rather give place to wrath. For it is written, "Vengeance is mine, I will repay," says the Lord. The verse is a reminder to leave vengeance to God and instead overcome evil with good. For example, Romans 12, verse 20, suggests feeding and giving a drink to an enemy who is hungry or thirsty. However, good does not mean weak. The vice president admitted publicly to Oprah Winfrey in a town hall that she, Harris, has a gun and would use it to defend her home. She gave further details on 60 Minutes when she told Bill Whitaker that she owned a Glock. As a former member of law enforcement, Harris said she respects the Second Amendment, as does my dad. Her running mate, Tim Waltz, is a lifelong hunter, former master sergeant in the National Guard, and a gun owner himself. Rule of law? I reminded my dad that Trump was indicted on 98 counts, convicted on 34, and found civilly liable for $500 million in corporate fraud and $200 million for defamation from a civilly adjudicated sexual abuse determination. That's not law and order. And my dad's latest letter denigrates Harris's ability to be a capable commander-in-chief, diplomat, and president. This is despite Harris's standing with Biden as they built a 50-country coalition with NATO at its core to defend democratic values in Ukraine. No one is making 47% of Americans support Trump. They support Trump because he is giving them what they want. And what they want is hard for the rest of us to acknowledge. Perhaps the cruelest, yet most fitting irony is that Trump reviles his loyalists. He looks down on them and sees them as rubes to swindle. I did all I could to reason with my dad and over a dozen Trump supporters who voted for Trump twice before and would again. In this election round, reason with means I begged. It didn't work with the most important voter, my dad. But I know I got through to the others. It's about embracing people where they are, taking that extra step. And even if you can't agree, at least you've met. So, as Election Day looms, I am exhausted, yes. But I am also hopeful. We need only to look at one of the works the artist CLEO contributed to this Transitions Redux to remind us where to look, where to go. Forward! In closing, I believe that we must turn to redemption. Trump supporters are our family, countrymen, and fellow human beings. As Harris does with Republicans, Democrats, independents, and voters of all stripes, I embrace and welcome them in. As Hillary's campaign slogan from 2016 reminds us, we are stronger together. The United States of America is our home, all of us. I know that I will always have a home with my dad, just as he knows he will always have one with me. We are family, just like America. Best wishes and good voting. George S. Corey.
Food for thought. Thank you so much for sharing, George, for your words and your heart. And that brings us to the conclusion of Voting is Our Superpower. Next up, Kiddos Are Groundbreakers, Parts 1 and 2. You won't want to miss it. As always, we welcome you to follow The Social Contract wherever you find your favorite podcasts, and check out our website at mytscpodcast.com. The Social Contract podcast is created by George S. Corey and CLEO, produced by Talkbox Productions and Listen, hosted by Tavia Gilbert, associate producer Tatiana St. Fard, mix and master by Brian Barney, additional dialogue editing by Kathleen Conti, production coordinator Deanna Wilson, social manager Suzette Burton. On behalf of George, CLEO, Stephen, Maya, and me, Tavia, thank you for listening.